When I say a simple shampoo bottle changed the course of my life, people usually laugh and think I'm exaggerating. But I'm not. Not even a little. If anything, I still think the universe has a wicked sense of humor. Because out of all the ways I could have discovered the truth, it had to be through something as random, as ordinary, as shampoo. And today, as I sit down to tell you this story for echoes of Sister Sephora, I can't help but feel like the signs were always there whispering, nudging, waiting for me to notice. I just didn't, until that moment. It all began on an evening that felt painfully normal. I was cleaning the bathroom, humming to myself, wiping down the sink the way I always did, when I noticed our shampoo bottles lined up side by side. His bottle was nearly empty. Odd, because I had just replaced it a week before. And trust me, he wasn't the type to suddenly wash his hair twice a day. The man barely used conditioner unless I forced him. Still, at that moment, I didn't think too much of it. Maybe he spilled some, I told myself. Maybe he'd been washing his hair more because of the heat. Maybe. My brain was handing out excuses like free samples, anything to maintain the quiet illusion that nothing was wrong. But that illusion had already started cracking long before the shampoo moment. I just wasn't ready to look at the cracks. I remember standing there, holding the bottle, turning it over in my hand, feeling something inside me tighten. It seemed silly, irrational even, to feel bothered by something so small. But that's the thing about intuition, it whispers before it screams. And mine had been whispering for weeks. He had been acting distant, smiling less, speaking less, and turning away from me more. His phone was suddenly glued to him, face down on the table, notifications silenced. He started taking longer showers, longer drives, longer pauses before answering simple questions. But every time I felt that pinch of doubt, I shoved it back down. That's what you do when you love someone. You give them the benefit of the doubt, even when it costs you your peace. I didn't want to be the suspicious girlfriend. I didn't want to be the dramatic one. I didn't want to be right. So that night, instead of confronting him about the empty bottle, I quietly replaced it with a different shampoo, same brand, different formula. I'm talking a small change, almost unnoticeable unless you really paid attention. I told myself it was nothing more than a tiny experiment, a harmless curiosity. It wasn't meant to expose anything. It was simply my way of checking if my imagination was messing with me. Because if he didn't notice, then maybe I was overthinking everything. Maybe it was just stress, maybe he was just tired, maybe relationships go through phases. But if he did notice, well, then I'd have to face whatever truth came with that realization. I never imagined how quickly that truth would show itself. The next morning, I pretended not to watch him as he showered. I heard the water running, the sound of lids opening and closing, the familiar rhythm of him rushing through his routine. When he walked into the room afterward, towel around his waist, hair dripping, his expression told me everything. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It wasn't even angry. It was a half-second pause, a tightening around his eyes, a slight frown that he quickly hid. But I saw it. And that was enough, because he only ever reacted like that when something interrupted the perfect structure of his habits. The habits he kept when he was hiding something. Still, I stayed quiet. I didn't ask. I didn't accuse. I just observed. Over the next few days, the smallest changes amplified everything I'd been ignoring. He seemed restless, like the shampoo swap had disturbed some unspoken pattern he desperately wanted to keep intact. He checked the bottles more than once. He used significantly less of the new shampoo, sometimes avoiding it altogether. Once, I even caught him sniffing it, as if trying to confirm whether it matched the scent he expected. I acted casual, uninterested, unaware. But inside, I felt that whisper turning into a steady hum, something is wrong. I wanted to believe it was all in my head. I wanted to believe things were still normal, still safe. But normal had slipped away quietly, long before I noticed. As days passed, his behavior became more erratic. He'd stand in the shower for too long, like he was thinking, or overthinking. He'd leave the bathroom with a slightly anxious look, as if worried I might ask something he wasn't prepared to answer. He became more protective of his things, especially his toiletries. I'd never seen someone act territorial about shampoo before. Every moment became a clue. Every reaction meant something. It was like watching a puzzle slowly assembling itself, piece by piece, even though I didn't want to see the final picture. By the fourth day, I knew something was definitely off. Not just because of the shampoo, but because of his sudden shift in mood. He was quieter now, tense in a way that didn't match the silliness of the situation. He kept asking, "Did you move my stuff?" Or, "Did you buy something different?" in this casual tone that didn't match the nervousness in his eyes. I would shrug and pretend I didn't remember. "I don't know," I'd say. "Maybe you're imagining it." And every time, he'd smile, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. And then, the moment that pushed everything over the edge happened on a Friday night. He came home late, much later than usual. His hair smelled different. Not the shampoo I swapped in, not the one we usually shared, not any scent I recognized, and when he kissed my cheek, his shirt smelled faintly of perfume, a soft, flowery scent that absolutely wasn't mine. He claimed he stayed late at work. I nodded. I didn't argue. I didn't even react, because I didn't need a dramatic confrontation to know that something was unraveling behind the scenes. I just needed patience, and the truth was already inching closer, like a shadow creeping across the floor. That night, as I stood in the bathroom again, staring at the row of bottles, I realized something important. It wasn't the shampoo itself. It was what it represented. A small shift in routine that revealed a much bigger shift in loyalty. A tiny change that shook the fragile illusion I was trying so hard to protect. And that's when the whisper of doubt finally turned into a voice. Clear, steady, undeniable, pay attention. I didn't know then just how messy, painful, or shocking the full truth would be. I didn't know that this trivial little bottle would lead me straight to the betrayal I never wanted to face. All I knew was that this was the beginning of something I couldn't ignore anymore, and once you notice something, you can never notice it again. After that night, everything inside me shifted. It wasn't dramatic, not like in movies where a woman suddenly stands up and decides she's done. No, my shift was quiet, silent even. It was the kind of internal change where you stop begging the universe for proof and start simply watching. Observing. Listening not to his words, but to the tiny inconsistencies he hoped I wouldn't catch. The truth was there, moving beneath the surface like a creature waiting to rise. And I could feel it, even if he thought he was hiding it well. The days that followed were heavier than usual, wrapped in an uncomfortable tension that neither of us dared to address. He had this strange habit now, checking the bathroom before he showered, like he was making sure something was in place. Sometimes he would lift the shampoo bottle, shake it gently, set it back down, and pretend nothing happened. Other times he would use the tiniest amount, just one quick squeeze, almost as if he didn't want the level to visibly change. It was bizarre. It was obsessive. And it was far from innocent. I didn't confront him. Not yet. I wanted the truth to reveal itself, not because I was afraid of asking, but because I knew the truth slips out more honestly when someone isn't prepared to defend it. So I let him live in his little bubble of secretiveness while I paid attention to everything he didn't say. We were sitting on the couch one evening, watching a show he used to love. Except he wasn't watching. His eyes kept drifting to his phone, lighting up every few minutes. He didn't open the message, not while I was in the room. He just stared at the notification and let it sit there, burning a silent hole in his attention. When I jokingly asked, "Who's texting you this late?" he shrugged. "Just work," he said. But the way he cleared the notification without opening it made the lie glow like a neon sign. His phone wasn't the only thing that changed. He had started caring more about his appearance. Not for me, not for us, but for something else entirely. He bought new shirts, styled his hair more neatly, shaved more often. And the worst part, none of it was for the moments we spent together. Not a single effort was directed at us. All that extra grooming was happening before he left the house. Before work. Before his so-called meetings. before whoever. Once, I watched him stand in front of the mirror, adjusting his collar 3 times until it sat perfectly. I stood in the doorway. "You look nice," I said softly. He flinched, just slightly, then forced a smile. "Oh, thanks. Big day at the office. Big day." Right. Funny how these big days never seemed to include me. It was around this time I started noticing something else. This subtle, strange smell that clung to him. Not the shampoo I bought. Not even the original one he used before the swap. This was softer, sweeter, undeniably feminine. He would walk past me, and the scent would follow him like a secret he didn't want exposed. I tried convincing myself it could have been anything. Maybe someone at work hugged him. Maybe he brushed past someone on the train. Maybe I was imagining everything because I was already paranoid. But the scent was too specific, too deliberate, too familiar in a way that told me this wasn't a one-time accident. One night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake listening to him breathe beside me, wondering how many lies a person can hold in one body without collapsing. He turned away from me even in his sleep, curled so tightly at the edge of the bed that it felt like an emotional cliff. One he had already stepped off while I was still standing behind him, shouting into the dark. The next morning, he left unusually early. He said he had to prepare something before the team arrived, but he didn't take his laptop. He didn't even take his work bag. Something inside me hardened. I waited 10 minutes after he left, then went into the bathroom. That's when I noticed it. The shampoo bottle I swapped, the one he barely used, was suddenly placed at a slightly different angle. But there was another detail that made my stomach sink. The level inside had changed. He had used it, but not on himself. The realization hit me like a cold wave sliding down my spine. His hair that morning didn't smell like the shampoo I swapped in. It smelled like nothing I recognized. But the bottle in our bathroom had definitely been used. So if it wasn't him using it, then who? I stared at the bottle, turning it over in my hands, feeling absurd for even considering the possibility. Shampoo doesn't lie. Shampoo doesn't travel. Shampoo doesn't jump from one shower to another on its own. Someone else had used it. Recently. I didn't want to spiral, but the truth was building itself without my permission. And now, it was standing right in front of me. Later that day, he texted me, probably coming home late again. "Don't wait up." I stared at the message for a while. Then, without replying, I placed my phone face down on the table, mirroring the way he always kept his. That evening, I started noticing memories I hadn't examined before. Things he said weeks ago, things I dismissed at the time. The sudden excuses, the random schedule changes, the calls he picked up outside the house, the times he smelled freshly showered even though he supposedly came straight from work, the tiny lies disguised as harmless comments. It all added up, not into one big, dramatic explosion, but into 100 small clues that formed a picture my heart didn't want to recognize. He came home near midnight. His hair was damp. The scent wasn't mine. He kissed my forehead half-heartedly and went straight to the shower. I sat on the edge of the bed listening to the water run, my heart beating calmly, almost too calmly. Sometimes the body knows the truth before the mind admits it. When he finished, I walked past the bathroom to get a glass of water, and then I froze. The shower steam had fogged the mirror, and through the haze, I saw it in the corner of the shelf, an unfamiliar bottle. Not mine, not his. Something completely new. Something with a floral label. Something that didn't belong in our home. I opened my mouth to call out to him, but I didn't. Instead, I just stared at that bottle, feeling the truth rise in my throat like a tide that couldn't be stopped anymore. In that moment, I didn't need him to confess. I didn't need to start a fight. I didn't need drama or shouting or accusations. I just needed to breathe. Because the truth was standing right there, dressed in pretty packaging and smelling like someone else. The shampoo swap was never really about the shampoo. It was about noticing the shift, the invisible line between loyalty and betrayal. And he had crossed it a long time ago, leaving me alone on the other side without even realizing I had followed the breadcrumbs straight to the truth. I walked back into the bedroom and lay down, But sleep didn't come. Not because I was breaking apart, but because I was piecing things together. And once the pieces fit, once the pattern revealed itself, there was no going back to pretending. No going back to silence. No going back to the girl who ignored her intuition. I didn't know what I would find next. But I knew the truth wasn't finished revealing itself. Not yet. By the next morning, something inside me had settled, not in a peaceful way, but in the way a storm settles right before it breaks everything apart. I wasn't confused anymore. I wasn't trying to convince myself that I was imagining things. The truth had stepped out of the shadows, fully visible now, refusing to hide behind his excuses or my love for him. And once you see something clearly, you can't pretend it's blurry just to comfort yourself. He acted normal at breakfast. That was the first thing that felt strange. Too normal. Too cheerful. He hummed a tune while buttering his toast. The same man who barely said a word to me the week before. He kissed the top of my head as he walked past me, something he used to do often but hadn't in a while. Guilt makes people nostalgic. I watched him try to slip into the version of himself he wanted me to remember. The attentive boyfriend, the affectionate partner, the man who used to make me feel safe. But he was too late. I had already seen behind the mask, and once you see the crack, the whole mask collapses. He left for work, again, grabbing his keys and giving me a quick smile. "Don't wait up," he said. The same line. The one that used to make me roll my eyes playfully. But now it felt like a countdown, a warning. Or maybe an unconscious confession. I didn't wait 10 minutes this time. I walked into the bathroom immediately after the door closed. The unfamiliar bottle was still on the shelf, just slightly moved from the night before. That was the thing. He thought he was careful. He thought he could hide something in plain sight, as long as he positioned it back neatly enough. But he wasn't thinking about the person he was hiding it from. He wasn't thinking about me. The woman who notices everything. The woman who loves deeply, but also observes quietly. The woman who doesn't need shouting matches to see through someone. She just needs silence. I picked up the unfamiliar bottle. The label read a flowery name I didn't recognize. The scent was soft but strong enough that it lingered in a room even after the person left. I unscrewed the cap and inhaled, and suddenly everything made sense. That was the scent he had been coming home with. Not mine, not his. Someone else's. Someone who was close enough to him that their shampoo had followed him into our home, into our bed, into the spaces I once considered safe. I set the bottle down and stared at it for a long moment, feeling sadness slowly turn into something sharper, clarity. I didn't cry. Not then. I think my heart had already done enough crying in the weeks leading up to this moment. Now, it was time for something else. I waited until afternoon before I finally decided what I needed to do. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want drama. I didn't want to shout or insult or break things. I wanted the truth, spoken out loud, not hidden in actions. I wanted him to face the story he had been writing behind my back. So I texted him, "We need to talk tonight. Don't be late." He replied quickly, almost too quickly. "Is everything okay?" I stared at the message, feeling that heavy calm wash over me again. I typed back, "Just come home." The hours between that text and his arrival felt like a slow drip of time, every minute stretching out like a thread pulled too thin. I walked around the house, touching things we bought together, pillows, mugs, silly souvenirs from weekend trips. Everything felt distant now, like props from a life that wasn't mine anymore. When he finally walked through the door, he tried to act casual, but there was a stiffness in his posture, a tightness around his jaw. He knew. On some level, he knew something had slipped out of his control. "What's going on?" he asked, attempting a light tone. I didn't bother easing into it. "Whose shampoo is in our bathroom?" He froze. It was incredible. His entire body reacted before his mouth did. His eyes widened just a fraction. His chest tightened. His hand, which was lifting his bag strap, stopped mid-air. The truth spilled out of him in a silent wave long before he said a word. What do you mean?" he finally stammered, forcing a confused expression that didn't match the panic in his eyes. I didn't repeat myself. You know what I'm talking about. He swallowed hard. Maybe it's yours. It's not, I interrupted softly. The softness hit him harder than a scream would have. Silence fell between us. Heavy, suffocating, undeniable. He sat down on the edge of the couch, his hands clasped together, elbows on his knees. He looked like a man trying to build a lie, but watching the pieces collapse before they even formed. Finally, he whispered, "It's not what you think." "But it always is." I didn't respond. I just watched him, the way he avoided looking at me, the way his foot tapped nervously, the way he kept opening his mouth only to close it again. Lies struggle when they run out of places to hide. After a long minute, he broke. "Eat, it's someone from work." The words hit the air like shattered glass. I stayed completely still. "How long?" I asked quietly. He pressed his palms to his forehead. "A few weeks. Maybe a couple of months. I don't know." "You do know," I said gently. "You just don't want to say it." He shut his eyes, and that was the answer. I wasn't angry at that moment. I was simply tired. Tired of the lies. Tired of the pretending. Tired of carrying a love that he had already let go of. "When did she come here?" I asked. My voice wasn't trembling, which surprised me. He hesitated, and hesitation is just another form of confession. He finally whispered, "I'm sorry." But apologies don't glue broken things back together. Not when the person didn't break them by accident. I let the silence stretch between us. He kept talking, rambling about mistakes, confusion, stress, how it just happened. All the lines cheaters rehearse without even realizing they become clichés. I barely listened. I was too busy replaying all the small signs I had ignored: the late nights, the changes in scent, the distant behavior, the strange reaction to the shampoo swap. Every piece slid into place, forming the full picture I had been avoiding. When he finished talking, I stood up slowly. "I'm not going to yell," I said. "I don't need to." Because the truth, it already said everything. He looked up at me with eyes full of regret, but regret isn't the same as love. Regret comes only when consequences arrive. "I wish you had told me," I whispered. "I didn't want to hurt you," he said. "But you did," I replied. "You just wanted to hide it." Those words finally made him look away. I walked to the bedroom, grabbed a small bag, and began to pack essentials. Not out of rage, not out of fear, but out of self-respect. When someone shows you their truth, you don't stay to negotiate with it. He followed me, voice breaking, begging to talk more, to fix things, to start over. But I knew something he didn't. Once trust breaks, love doesn't disappear. It just stops living in the same house. I zipped the bag, slung it over my shoulder, and walked past him. At the door I paused. "You didn't lose me today," I said without turning around. "You lost me the moment you let someone else into the spaces that were supposed to be ours." I walked out, leaving behind the scent of betrayal and a shampoo bottle that had told me the truth before he ever did. The night air felt cold but clean. I took a deep breath, feeling something inside me shift once again. But this time, it was liberation. Sometimes the smallest changes reveal the biggest secrets, and sometimes those secrets free you from people who were never meant to stay. You've been watching Echoes of Sister Sephora. Stay strong, stay aware, and stay true to yourself. See you in the next story.